Hi, Dave Weiss here again for the Glue Bomb Show. Well, I'm rounding third and heading for home on the iced tea project, and I gotta tell you, it's been a blast. But we're down to the last few things, and I thought I'd share just a little couple of tips here. First of all, we're down to putting wheels and tires on this thing. It's nearly finished, and one of the things that I want to show you here is we have these slicks that they gave us. The kit contains slicks. Now, you might notice there's some wrinkling on the bottom here. That's not a mistake, okay? If you notice, I don't know if I can make you see this, but there's a flat spot on the bottom of the tire. Okay, this would be what a drag slick would do. When they put a drag slick on a car, because they do the burnout where it really heats the air inside the tire, when they roll them up to the line, they're a little bit flat. And when the spinning heats the air and blows it up to its full inflation. So, but if you notice, I don't know if you can see this, but it's real glossy and has a seam up the middle. And I don't know that we're going to be able to do a whole lot with that seam. And normally this is a show rod, so we wouldn't do this necessarily because there would be they try to keep the tires shiny and all that, but this is a drag slick, and it's flat spotted on the bottom, which means somebody wanted to race this puppy, or at least that's how I take it. And so one of the things that we can do to make this tire look a lot more realistic is very, very simple. We're just going to take our old friend some 150 grit sandpaper, this is, and we're just going to start rubbing. We're just going to hold the slick together, and we're going to start rubbing. Okay, we're gonna try to only rub the tread part, what would be the tread. We're gonna try not to rub the side walls. We don't want to wear down the side walls too much because we would want them to be shiny. But we're gonna try to take some of the shine off of these tires, and I'm gonna stop it here and so that I can do the rest of the work. Now, when you're done with the sanding, your tire is going to look a little more like this. It's going to be a little bit rougher on the edges. You see, I still have a little bit of work to do here at a couple spots where it didn't quite line up. But that's what it should look like when it's finished. It should be a nice grip. Now, of course, this is going to be held together by the wheel. The kit recommends that you don't actually glue this tire together. It'll be held together by the wheel itself. But one of the other things that I recommended was that you actually lay your sandpaper flat on the table and then roll it, kind of roll it across. That way, because if you think about it, you're doing a burnout, the tire is spinning at a pretty constant rate of speed, and so it would grind off pretty evenly all throughout. So anyway, I'm going to do the other tire now, and then we're going to go back and we're going to look at the high raised lettering on it a little bit and how to paint that if you so desire. All right, now that we've finished the sanding of the wheels, I want to have a look at these raised letters here. You're probably not going to be able to see this real well. But there are raised letters on here. These are MH Race Masters, it looks like. So what I'm going to do is, this is a technique, it's kind of difficult, but we're going to take a little bit of our Testor's flat white paint here. I'm just going to shake it up. Okay, sometimes I stir it. For this one, I'm not quite going to do quite as much of that. All right, we're just going to kind of get it in there, shake it around a little bit, and what that will do, it will leave you a little bit of residue in the lid, okay? That's all we want. We don't want much paint at all because this is really easy to mess up, okay? As a matter of fact, if you don't feel comfortable, you may just want to consider not doing this step. All I do is I take and get a very tiny little bit of my white paint on my brush, and then I go back to the edge of the lid and I scrape almost all of it off so that there's only very little paint left on the brush. And then we just very carefully, if you're like me and your eyes are a little older, this can be kind of difficult. We're just going to barely brush it right across those letters, just a tiny little bit. And I see I messed up already. Just a tiny bit, You go over it very gently. In art, we call this dry brush. There's very little paint on the brush, just enough to stick to those high raised areas. And it'll look something like that when it's done. Okay, I'm going to go and do the other tires, and then we'll come back to look at one last little painting step here that should be kind of fun. It's a technique that I haven't done on a model before, but I'm hoping I can show you something pretty cool with it. All right, we'll get back to you in a second. One of the nice things about these is they are two-sided tires, so they have letters on both sides. So if you make a mistake on one, you can flip it over and do the other one, because one of these sides is going to be smack up against the body of the car you'll never see. So that way you get an extra opportunity to do your best work on these. And on this particular kit, I should mention that the front tires are treaded, and that they also have no letters on them, so we don't have to paint those. I'm also not going to sand them, only because I think it would just that tread looks nice, so I'm going to let it alone. Some other folks might do it differently, but that's what I'm going to do. Now, the one other thing this has, remember, this is the iced tea. And part of the reason for that is it's an ice hauler. Now, here's these two ice cubes, right? These are transparent, and it tells you to paint them transparent blue. Now, I saw them painted transparent blue, and I really wasn't a fan. So I'm going to paint them a little bit differently. And also you notice they have drips around the outside where the ice would be melting. The object of the game here is to keep the paint off of that altogether, so that looks like transparent water up against the wooden bed part of the car. So what I'm going to do once again is I'm going to take my white. Now, I'm going to use I'm not going transparent with this, okay? But I'm going to do a technique that I've done painting on people's windows for sign painting many times. I'm going to try it here with this. I'm hopeful it will work. And the good news is, if it doesn't work, I still have a different way I can do it. However, what we're going to do is we're not going to paint the outside. We're going to paint it on the inside. Now, this white paint, remember, we just kind of shook it. We didn't really blend it up real well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the entire inside of the ice cube white. Right? If you look at an ice cube, it's not really blue anyway, right? Most of them are very white. And so that's what we're going to do. If you look at it, you can see it looks fairly solid. However, we're not done yet. I'm going to paint the whole inside. And I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Don't be too neat with this. What you want to do is you want to make it a little streaky on purpose. All right, you're just going to go all the way around the inside, fill in as much as you can. Notice I'm leaving it on the trees. I know that makes some people cringe, but I like to leave them on the trees, especially for things like this, especially for clear parts, because they blend. They don't blend. It's the clear parts. It's easier to mess them up. So I keep them on the tree until it's done. Now, I also have this nice little bit of flat ice blue is the other color here. And we're going to take that. Oh, boy. Okay, I apologize. That got a little bit awkward there, but there's a reason for that. I ended up having a bottle of paint that the lid was pretty stuck. And so there's a tool that every model painter needs and should keep on their table, and it's this tool right here. A very simple pliers. Just clamp that on there, give it a turn, and you broke it loose. Now, again, I took these two ice cubes and I painted them white. Now, it's going to be a little hard for you to see, but they're streaky. I did that on purpose. I didn't use completely thick paint. I did that on purpose. Now, while it is still wet, while that white paint is still wet, we're going to take a little bit of this blue, and we're going to brush it inside, And we don't have to do it everywhere, but we're going to do it at a couple places. And we're just going to sort of stroke it around in there. And what this will do is it will blend the paint. And so you'll end up having an ice cube that's sort of streaked with white and blue. And I think this looks pretty much like real ice this way. And the nice thing with this is, if you don't like exactly how it works, while the paint's still wet, just keep working it around. Bring a little more blue into it, and maybe you'll want to bring a little white into it if you think you've made it too blue. Again, we want this to look as natural as we possibly can. You can see I'm hoping you can see that. If I brush in a little bit in here, you see how it's changing the color from white to a more icy blue. And again, I'm using a flat paint here because it really doesn't matter, because the plastic itself is glossy. And they look pretty much like real ice cubes by now, or at least I think they do. And I'd like to know how you paint them. I'm sure there are many different ways. This is just one way. This is just my way. Like I say, I used to do some sign painting and some windows. And so one of the things that's neat about working on glass is you work backwards. I would do all the line work, which is usually the last thing I would do on a piece of art. I would do all of that first, and then I would put the colors in behind. And I'd put the highlights and shadows first, and then the big block areas behind it. And you'd end up with these really cool looking paintings. They're painted on the glass, so the glass takes care of the smoothness part. It was really pretty cool. But anyway, this is how you paint, or at least how I paint, the ice cubes for the iced tea. I'm going to let this dry upside down overnight. These things will move around and coagulate a little bit, but by morning, they'll be ready to glue down into the iced tea. I'm hoping our next episode you'll see the finished product. So you guys have a great night, take care, and God bless you. Bye-bye.